What her son wrote made a billionaire CEO stop everything. What if a single letter could destroy everything you thought you knew about your life? What if the son you never knew existed wrote you a message so powerful that it went viral and reached millions before it ever reached you? This is the story of Roman Hale, a billionaire who thought he had everything, until 4 words on a screen made him realize he had nothing at all. Before Roman Hale became the man who owned skylines, before he negotiated with governments and built empires that changed industries, he was just a kid. A brilliant scholarship student trying to outrun the poverty that clung to him like a shadow. He studied harder than anyone else because he had to. While his classmates worried about prom dates and college parties, Roman worried about whether he'd eat that week. He learned early that survival wasn't about luck. It was about control. About never letting anyone see you weak. About never depending on anyone for anything. But then he met her. Serena Vale. It happened at a community volunteer event, one of those things Roman only attended because it looked good on his resume. He was handing out meal kits at a shelter when she walked in. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't dressed to stand out. But something about her presence made the room feel warmer. She smiled at an elderly woman like she had all the time in the world. She listened to a young mother's story without checking her phone. And when she finally looked at Roman, it wasn't with pity or judgment. It was with curiosity. She said, "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world." He replied, "Someone has to." She laughed softly and said, "Or maybe you just haven't learned to share it yet." That was the beginning. Serena was everything Roman wasn't. Warm where he was guarded. Patient where he was restless. She believed in goodness, in second chances, in the idea that people were worth more than their bank accounts. Roman believed in survival. In results. In the cold logic that the world rewarded strength, not softness. But somehow, impossibly, they believed in each other. For a while. Roman loved Serena with a softness he showed no one else. With her, he wasn't the future billionaire. He wasn't the scholarship kid clawing his way out of nothing. He was just a man who wanted to be seen. And she saw him. All of him. The brilliance and the fear. The ambition and the loneliness. She didn't try to fix him. She just stood beside him and said, "You don't have to do this alone." But the closer Roman came to success, the more he pulled away. His startup began to gain traction. Investors started calling. Opportunities flooded in. And with every win, every milestone, every step toward the life he'd always dreamed of, Roman felt Serena slipping further from the center of his world. He told himself it was temporary. That once he made it, once he secured his future, he'd come back to her. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was choosing his empire over his emotions. He was choosing control over connection. One night, after closing his first major deal, Roman sat across from Serena at a small cafe. She reached for his hand and said, "I'm proud of you." He pulled his hand back and said, "I need to focus right now." She asked, "Focus on what?" He said, "On becoming someone who matters." She looked at him with quiet sadness and said, "You already matter, Roman. At least to me." But it wasn't enough. A week later, Roman walked away. Without warning. Without explanation. He sent a single text. "I can't do this right now. I'm sorry." And then he disappeared into his empire, convincing himself that love was a distraction, that vulnerability was a weakness, that he needed to sacrifice his heart to protect his future. Serena was left heartbroken. She called. She texted. She waited. But Roman never responded. He had made his choice. And she was left to pick up the pieces of a love she thought was forever. Months passed. Roman's company exploded. He was featured in magazines. Invited to conferences. Celebrated as a rising star in the tech world. His life became a blur of meetings, investments, and late nights in glass towers. He told himself he was happy. That he had made the right choice. That Serena would have only held him back. But then Serena discovered something that changed everything. She was pregnant. She stared at the test in her bathroom, her hands shaking, her mind racing. She thought about calling Roman. She picked up her phone a dozen times. She typed out messages. Long ones. Short ones. Angry ones. Pleading ones. But every time, she deleted them. She thought, he chose his empire over me. What makes me think he'd choose a child? She thought, he's building a life I don't belong in. A world where people like me are footnotes, not partners. She thought, if I tell him, he'll either resent me or feel obligated. And I don't want either. So she made a decision. She left the city. She moved in with her aunt in a quiet town hours away. And she raised her son alone. His name was Arden. And from the moment he was born, Serena saw Roman in him. The same deep gaze. The same stubborn jaw. The same way of studying people as if he could read their souls. But Serena shielded Arden from bitterness. She never spoke badly of Roman. When Arden was old enough to ask, "Where's my dad?" she knelt down, looked him in the eyes, and said, "He didn't know about you. But if he had, he would have loved you." Arden asked, "Why didn't you tell him?" Serena paused, then said, "Because sometimes love means letting people find their own way. Even if it hurts." Arden grew up brilliant and kind. He excelled in school. He asked questions that made teachers pause. He observed the world with a quiet intensity that reminded Serena of Roman every single day. But unlike his father, Arden believed in connection. In empathy. In the idea that people mattered more than success. If you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to subscribe to Mr. Ellington Love Lines for more powerful stories about love, loss, and second chances. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Meanwhile, Roman Hale became a global force. He built Hale Technologies into one of the most powerful companies in the world. He owned properties in 12 countries. He sat on boards. He influenced policy. He was profiled in Forbes, interviewed on major networks, celebrated as a self-made billionaire who defied the odds. But at night, in the quiet hum of his penthouse, Roman felt an emptiness he couldn't name. He worked 18-hour every day. He traveled constantly. He dated briefly, but never seriously. His team joked that he worked like a man running from something. They were right. He was running from memories of Serena. From the softness she brought. From the version of himself that loved her. He told himself he made the right choice. That love was a luxury he couldn't afford. That sentiment was weakness. But every now and then, in the rare moments when he was alone, Roman would wonder. He'd wonder if Serena ever thought about him. If she moved on. If she was happy. He never reached out. He never searched for her. Because deep down, he was afraid. Afraid that she hated him. Afraid that she had forgotten him. Afraid that the one real thing he ever had was gone forever. And then, 14 years after he walked away, fate intervened. It started with a school project. Arden's teacher assigned the class a simple task. Write a heartfelt message to someone who shaped your life. Most kids wrote to parents, teachers, grandparents. Arden wrote to someone he'd never met. Someone he only knew through the careful stories his mother told. His letter began, "To the man I've never met but somehow carry in my eyes. My name is Arden Vale. I'm 14 years old. And I think you're my father." The teacher read it and cried. She asked Arden if she could share it at a local writing showcase. He said yes. A reporter in the audience was moved and posted a snippet online. And within hours, it went viral. Millions viewed it. Thousands shared it. News outlets picked it up. People debated it. Some called it heartbreaking. Others called it inspiring. And somehow, by fate or irony or the cruel humor of the universe, it landed on Roman Hale's desk. An assistant forwarded it with a simple note. "Sir, someone tagged the company. They're asking, is this your son?" Roman opened the letter on his tablet. He read it once. Then again. Then a third time as his breath caught in his throat. The words blurred as tears filled his eyes. "Mom says you were kind before you were successful. Sometimes I look in the mirror and wonder if we have the same smile. I hope one day I can meet you, not because you're rich, but because you're part of me." Roman's hand shook. His heart cracked in a way no financial loss had ever cracked it. He kept reading. "Mom never said you were bad. She said you were scared. So if you ever read this, I forgive you. Even if you don't know what I'm forgiving." Roman whispered, "Serena." Then, "My son." His voice broke. His chest heaved. For the first time in years, Roman Hale, the man who built empires, the man who never showed weakness, broke down. Not in a boardroom. Not in public. But alone, as the truth unraveled him. He had a son. A son who looked like him. Who thought like him. Who forgave him for sins he didn't even know he committed. And the woman he loved, the woman he abandoned, raised that son alone. Without his money. Without his support. Without his presence. Roman sat in his office for hours. He didn't take calls. He didn't answer emails. He just stared at the letter and felt the weight of 14 years of absence crash down on him. He thought, I could have been there. I could have held him. I could have watched him grow. But I chose this. I chose glass towers and stock prices and meetings that meant nothing. I chose everything except what mattered. Before you find out what happens next, drop a like on this video if this story is hitting you in the feels. And comment below, have you ever regretted a choice you made in love? Let's talk about it. Finally, Roman stood. He didn't call his PR team. He didn't draft a statement. He didn't strategize. He grabbed his keys, walked out of his office, and got in his car. His assistant called after him. "Sir, you have a meeting in 20 minutes. Roman didn't stop. He said, "Cancel it. Cancel everything." He drove for 3 hours. No security. No staff. Just him and the highway and the sound of his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. He followed the address listed in the article. A small town he'd never heard of. A place where people knew each other's names and life moved slower. He found the school. Found the classroom. Found Arden's project, the full version, pinned to a bulletin board outside the office. He stood there and read every word. One sentence destroyed him. "If I ever meet you, I hope you see more than your reflection." Roman closed his eyes. He thought, I've spent my whole life building a reflection. A version of myself the world could admire. But I forgot to build a soul. He asked a secretary for the address listed on the emergency contact form. She hesitated. He said, "Please. I'm his father." The secretary looked at him, recognized him from the news, and wrote it down. Roman drove to a modest house on a quiet street. The kind of house he would have dismissed as insignificant years ago. But now, standing in front of it, it felt like the most important place in the world. He walked to the door. His hands trembled. He knocked. Footsteps. The sound of a lock turning. And then the door opened. Serena stood there. Older. Tired. But still beautiful in a way that made Roman's chest ache. Her breath caught. Her eyes widened. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Roman whispered, "Serena." She stared at him. Her voice was quiet but steady. She said, "Roman." He said, "I saw the letter." She nodded slowly. He said, "Why didn't you tell me?" She looked at him with a mix of sadness and strength. She said, "Because you made it clear what mattered to you. And it wasn't me." Roman flinched. He said, "I was wrong." Serena shook her head. She said, "You were honest. You chose your empire. I chose our son." Roman's voice cracked. He said, "I didn't know." She said, "Would it have changed anything?" He opened his mouth but couldn't answer. Because he didn't know. And that truth hung between them like a wound. Then a voice came from inside the house. "Mom, who is it?" Serena stepped aside. And there, standing in the doorway, was Arden. 14 years old. Tall and lean with Roman's eyes and Serena's quiet strength. He held a notebook. He stared at Roman with quiet shock. Recognition meeting reality. Roman's breath left him. He whispered, "You're my son." Arden studied him. Not with anger. Not with excitement. Just with the steady gaze of someone who had already made peace with an absence. He said, "I wondered if you'd ever show up." Roman swallowed hard. He said, "I'm here now. If you'll let me stay." Arden didn't answer. Serena didn't answer. But they didn't close the door. And in that moment, Roman realized something. He had spent his entire life chasing power. Chasing wealth. Chasing a version of success that meant nothing without the people who mattered. And now, standing on the doorstep of the life he abandoned, he finally understood. Success wasn't measured in billions. It was measured in moments. In presence. In the courage to stay when everything in you wanted to run. If this story is giving you chills, don't forget to share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to Mr. Ellington Love Lines because we're just getting started. Roman stood there, waiting. Serena looked at Arden. Arden looked at his mother. And finally, after what felt like an eternity, Serena stepped back. She said, "You can come in. But just because the door is open doesn't mean you've earned a place here." Roman nodded. He said, "I know. And I'm ready to earn it." He stepped inside. The house was small but warm. Photos lined the walls. Pictures of Arden as a baby. As a toddler. As a child. Moments Roman had missed. Milestones he would never get back. He stopped in front of a photo of Arden holding a trophy. He asked, "What's this?" Arden said, "Science fair. 3rd grade. I built a solar-powered car." Roman smiled faintly. He said, "That's incredible." Arden shrugged. He said, "Mom helped." They sat in the living room. The silence was heavy. Finally, Serena said, "Why are you here, Roman?" He looked at her. He said, "Because I read his letter. And it broke me." She said, "Good. Maybe you needed to break." He nodded. He said, "I did. I've been broken for a long time. I just didn't know it." Arden spoke up. He said, "The letter wasn't meant to guilt you." Roman looked at him. He said, "Then what was it meant to do?" Arden said, "It was meant to make peace with the fact that I'd probably never meet you." Roman's throat tightened. He said, "But you did. You met me." Arden said, "Yeah. But I don't know if that changes anything." Roman leaned forward. He said, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to trust me. But I want to try. I want to know you. I want to be part of your life. If you'll let me." Arden looked at his mother. Serena said softly, "That's up to you, sweetheart." Arden was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I wrote that letter because I wanted to stop wondering. I wanted to stop imagining who you were. And now you're here. And honestly, I don't know how I feel about it." Roman said, "That's fair." Arden said, "But if you really want to try, then you have to prove it. Not with money. Not with gifts. With time. With showing up." Roman said, "I will. I promise." Serena's voice was firm. She said, "Promises are easy, Roman. You made promises to me once too." He looked at her. He said, "I know. And I broke them. But I'm not that man anymore." She said, "Then prove it." "Not to me. To him." Roman stayed for hours. They talked. Awkwardly at first. Then slowly, tentatively, they began to share pieces of their lives. Arden told Roman about school, about his love for engineering, about the projects he was working on. Roman listened. Really listened. Not as a billionaire evaluating an investment, but as a father trying to understand his son. At one point, Arden asked, "Why did you leave?" Roman exhaled slowly. He said, "Because I was terrified. I thought love would make me weak. I thought I had to choose between being successful and being vulnerable." Arden said, "So you chose success?" Roman nodded. He said, "And I lost everything that mattered." Serena stood. She said, "It's getting late." Roman stood too. He said, "Can I come back?" Serena looked at Arden. Arden said, "Yeah. You can come back." Roman's eyes filled with tears. He said, "Thank you." Arden said, "But don't make me regret it." Roman walked to the door. Before he left, he turned back. He said, "Serena, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I need you to know, walking away from you was the worst mistake of my life." She didn't respond. But her eyes softened. Just a little. And for Roman, that was enough. He drove back to the city in silence. But this time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like possibility. Like the beginning of something he didn't know he was allowed to hope for. When he got home, he didn't go to his office. He didn't check his emails. He sat on his couch and pulled out his phone. He looked at photos of Arden from the article. And for the first time in years, Roman Hale smiled. Not the polished smile he wore in boardrooms. But a real smile. The kind that comes from something deeper than success. Over the next few weeks, Roman returned. Every weekend. Sometimes just for a few hours. Sometimes for the whole day. He brought nothing but himself. No extravagant gifts. No attempts to buy his way into Arden's life. Just his presence. His attention. His willingness to show up. At first, Arden kept him at a distance. He answered questions politely but didn't volunteer much. He let Roman into his world but didn't invite him deeper. Roman didn't push. He waited. He listened. He showed up. Again and again. One Saturday, Arden was working on a project in the garage. A small robot he was programming for a competition. Roman knocked on the door. He said, "Can I watch?" Arden shrugged. He said, "Sure." Roman sat on a stool and watched in silence as Arden soldered wires and adjusted code. After a while, Arden said, "You can help if you want." Roman looked up. He said, "Really?" Arden said, "Yeah. Hand me that screwdriver." They worked together for hours. Roman followed Arden's instructions. He asked questions. He made mistakes. And Arden corrected him without judgment. At one point, Arden said, "You're not as smart as I thought you'd be." Roman laughed. He said, "I'm smart about some things. But this is your world." Arden smiled. Just a little. And Roman felt like he'd won the lottery. If you're still watching, thank you. This story means a lot, and so do you. Drop a comment and let me know, do you believe people can change? Can someone who walked away ever truly come back? Slowly, the walls began to come down. Arden started asking Roman questions. About his work. About his childhood. About the choices he made. Roman answered honestly. He didn't sugarcoat. He didn't make excuses. He said, "I was selfish. I was scared. And I hurt people I loved because I thought success would fill the emptiness. But it didn't." Arden said, "So what changed?" Roman said, "Your letter. You reminded me what actually matters." One evening, Serena invited Roman to stay for dinner. It was simple. Pasta and salad. But sitting around that table, laughing at Arden's jokes, listening to Serena talk about her day, Roman felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. After dinner, Serena walked Roman to the door. She said, "He's starting to trust you." Roman said, "I know. And I won't let him down." Serena said, "You better not. Because if you hurt him, I will make sure you regret it." Roman said, "I believe you. And I won't. I promise." Months passed. Roman restructured his life. He delegated more at work. He stopped traveling as much. He made Arden a priority. Not just in words. But in actions. He attended Arden's robotics competitions. He helped with homework. He showed up for school events. And slowly, Arden began to see Roman not as the father who abandoned him, but as the father who came back. One night, after a particularly successful competition, Arden hugged Roman. It was brief. Awkward. But real. Roman held on just a second longer. And when they pulled apart, Arden said, "Thanks for coming." Roman's voice was thick with emotion. He said, "I wouldn't miss it for the world." But rebuilding trust with Serena was harder. She was polite. Cordial. But guarded. Roman didn't blame her. He knew he had broken something precious. And he didn't know if it could ever be repaired. One evening, after Arden went to bed, Roman and Serena sat on the porch. The night was quiet. Stars scattered across the sky. Roman said, "I know I can't undo the past." Serena said, "No. You can't." He said, "But I want you to know, I think about it every day. About what I lost. About what I did to you." Serena looked at him. She said, "You didn't just hurt me, Roman. You made me feel like I wasn't enough. Like love wasn't enough." He said, "You were always enough. I was the one who wasn't." She said, "Then why did you leave?" He said, "Because I was terrified that if I stayed, I'd fail. That I'd become the person I was running from. That I'd disappoint you." Serena said, "So you left to protect me from disappointment?" Roman nodded. She said, "That's the most selfish thing I've ever heard." Roman flinched. He said, "I know." Serena said, "You didn't protect me. You destroyed me. I spent months wondering what I did wrong. Wondering if I wasn't smart enough. Pretty enough. Successful enough." Roman's voice broke. He said, "You were perfect. You are perfect. I was the problem." Serena wiped her eyes. She said, "I needed to hear that. 14 years ago." They sat in silence. Then Serena said, "I don't know if I can forgive you." Roman said, "I understand." She said, "But I see you trying. And that matters." He said, I'll keep trying. For as long as it takes. She said, good. Because Arden deserves a father. And whether I like it or not, that's you. Roman nodded. He looked out at the stars. He said, do you ever think about what we could have been? Serena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, every day. But thinking about what could have been doesn't change what is. Roman said, what if we could try again? Not as who we were. But as who we are now. Serena shook her head. She said, I can't do that, Roman. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He said, I understand. She said, but I'm willing to be civil. For Arden. Roman said, that's more than I deserve. Weeks turned into months. Roman continued to show up. He and Arden grew closer. They developed inside jokes. They had routines. Friday nights became movie nights. Saturday mornings became breakfast at the diner downtown. Sundays were for working on projects together. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. One Friday, as they sat watching a film, Arden said, can I ask you something? Roman said, anything. Arden said, do you regret it? Leaving? Roman paused the movie. He turned to face his son. He said, every single day. Arden said, but you're successful. You have everything. Roman said, I have money. I have a company. But for 14 years, I didn't have you. And that's not success. That's failure. Arden looked down. He said, sometimes I'm angry at you. Roman said, you should be. Arden said, but other times, I'm just sad. Sad that we missed so much time. Roman felt tears sting his eyes. He said, me too. Arden said, but I'm glad you're here now. Roman pulled his son into a hug. He said, so am I. So am I. Serena watched from the doorway. She saw the way Roman held their son. The way Arden relaxed into his father's embrace. And for the first time since Roman came back, she felt something shift. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something softer. Something like hope. One evening, Roman asked Serena if they could talk. They sat in the backyard while Arden finished his homework inside. Roman said, I know you don't trust me. And I know I haven't earned it. But I need you to know something. Serena said, what? He said, I'm not here because of guilt. I'm not here because the letter went viral. I'm here because when I read what Arden wrote, I realized I'd been living half a life. And I don't want to do that anymore. Serena said, what are you saying? Roman said, I'm saying I want to be in his life. Permanently. Not just weekends. Not just visits. I want to be his father. Really be his father. Serena said, you can't just decide that now. He said, I know. But I'm asking you to let me try. She said, what about your company? Your empire? He said, I can run it from anywhere. I can hire people. I can delegate. But I can't delegate being a father. Serena looked at him. She said, you're serious. He said, completely. She said, this isn't just about Arden, is it? Roman shook his head. He said, no. It's about all of us. About the family I walked away from. About the life I should have fought for. Serena said, we're not a family, Roman. We're co-parents at best. He said, I know. But maybe, one day, we could be more. Serena stood. She said, don't do this. Don't make promises you can't keep. Roman stood too. He said, I'm not making promises. I'm stating facts. I love Arden. And I still love you. Serena's breath caught. She said, "You don't get to say that." He said, "I know. But it's true." She said, "You had your chance. You walked away." Roman said, "And I've regretted it every day since." Serena shook her head. She said, "Regret isn't enough." He said, "Then what is? What do I have to do?" She said, "I don't know. But you can't rush this. You can't fix 14 years in a few months." Roman nodded. He said, "You're right. I'm sorry." Serena said, "Stop apologizing. Just be here. Be consistent. Be the father Arden needs. And maybe, eventually, I'll figure out if I can trust you again." Roman said, "I can do that." She said, "Good. Because that's all I'm offering right now." As the months continued, Roman made good on his word. He moved his primary operations closer to Serena and Arden's town. He bought a modest house nearby. Nothing extravagant. Nothing flashy. Just a place where Arden could have his own room when he stayed over. A place that felt like home. Arden started spending weekends with Roman. They cooked together. Badly at first, but they learned. They watched documentaries. They built things. They talked. Really talked. About life. About dreams. About fears. Arden opened up in ways he never had before. And Roman listened with the patience of a man who knew he'd already wasted too much time. One weekend, Arden said, "I used to imagine what you were like." Roman said, "What did you imagine?" Arden said, "I thought you'd be cold. Distant. Too busy for me." Roman said, "And now?" Arden said, "You're none of those things. You're just you." Roman smiled. He said, "Is that okay?" Arden said, "Yeah. It's better than okay." During one visit, Arden asked, "Do you still love Mom?" Roman froze. He said, "Yes." Arden said, "Does she know?" Roman said, "I told her." Arden said, "What did she say?" Roman said, "That regret isn't enough." Arden nodded thoughtfully. He said, "She's right. But maybe if you keep showing up, she'll see you're serious." Roman said, "That's the plan." Arden said, "Good. Because I think she still loves you too. She just doesn't want to admit it." Roman's heart raced. He said, "What makes you think that?" Arden said, "The way she looks at you when you're not watching. The way she smiles when you text. The way she defends you when her friends say you don't deserve another chance." Roman said, "She does that?" Arden nodded. He said, "Yeah. She does." That night, Roman lay awake thinking. About Serena. About Arden. About the life they could have if she'd let him back in. Not just as Arden's father. But as her partner. Her equal. The man he should have been from the start. The next morning, Roman showed up at Serena's house with coffee. She opened the door surprised. She said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I wanted to see you." She said, "Arden's at a friend's house." He said, "I know. I came to see you." She hesitated, then let him in. They sat in the kitchen. Roman said, "I've been thinking." Serena said, "About what?" He said, "About us. About what I lost. About what I want." She said, "Roman, we've been through this." He said, "I know. But I need you to hear me. Really hear me." She sighed. She said, "Okay. I'm listening." Roman took a breath. He said, "When I left you, I thought I was choosing my future. But I was actually running from it. I was terrified of being the man my father was. Broke. Angry. Trapped. So I decided I'd never be trapped by anything. Not by poverty. Not by emotions. Not by love. Serena said, so you trapped yourself instead. He nodded. He said, exactly. I built a prison out of success. And I've been living in it ever since. He continued. He said, but when I read Arden's letter, something broke. I realized that all the money, all the power, all the recognition, it meant nothing. Because the one thing I wanted most was the thing I threw away. You. Us. The life we could have built together. Serena's eyes welled up. She said, you can't just say things like that and expect me to fall into your arms. Roman said, I'm not expecting anything. I'm just telling you the truth. He said, I know I don't deserve you. I know I broke your heart. I know I abandoned you when you needed me most. But I'm asking, not for forgiveness, not for a second chance, but for the opportunity to prove that I've changed. That I'm not the scared kid who ran away. That I'm the man you believed I could be. Serena wiped her eyes. She said, this is hard for me, Roman. He said, I know. She said, I loved you so much. And when you left, it destroyed me. I had to rebuild myself from nothing. And I did. I became strong. Independent. I raised our son alone. And I'm proud of that. But it hurt. It still hurts. Roman reached across the table. He took her hand. She didn't pull away. He said, I can't change the past. But I can be different in the future. I can show you, every day, that you matter. That Arden matters. That this family matters more than anything else in my life. Serena looked at their joined hands. She said, what are you asking me? He said, I'm asking if you'd be willing to try. To see if we can build something new. Not what we had. But something stronger. Something built on truth and presence and commitment. Serena was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I'm scared. Roman said, me too. She said, what if you leave again? He said, I won't. She said, how do I know that? He said, because I've spent 14 years learning that nothing is worth losing you. Not money. Not success. Not anything. Serena said, I need time. Roman said, take all the time you need. I'll be here. She looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time, she saw not the boy who left her. Not the billionaire who showed up out of nowhere. But a man who was trying. Who was fighting for them. Who was willing to be vulnerable. And that vulnerability, that willingness to be seen in all his brokenness, was what finally cracked the wall around her heart. She said, okay. Roman said, okay. She said, okay. We can try. But slowly. Very slowly. Roman's face lit up. He said, slow is fine. Slow is perfect. She said, and if you hurt Arden, if you hurt me, if you disappear again, there won't be a third chance. He said, I understand. And I won't. I promise you, I won't. They sat there, hands still joined, letting the weight of the moment settle over them. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It wasn't a dramatic reunion. It was quieter than that. More fragile. But it was real. And real was what they needed. Over the following weeks, Roman and Serena began to rebuild what had been broken. But it wasn't like before. This time, there were no grand gestures. No sweeping romantic moments. Just small, intentional acts of care. Roman would bring Serena her favorite tea when he picked up Arden. He'd fix the leaky faucet she'd been meaning to get to. He'd listen when she talked about her day without trying to solve her problems. He just listened. And slowly, Serena began to let her guard down. One afternoon, Serena's car broke down on her way home from work. She called Roman. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. He answered on the first ring. She said, "I'm stuck on Route 9. My car won't start." He said, "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't move." She said, "You don't have to drop everything." He said, "Yes I do. You called. That means it matters." He arrived in 8 minutes. He checked under the hood, called a tow truck, and drove her home. On the way, Serena said, "Thank you." Roman said, "You don't have to thank me." She said, "Yes I do. You showed up." He said, "I'll always show up. That's the difference now." Serena looked at him. And for the first time in 14 years, she believed him. Arden noticed the shift. He saw the way his parents looked at each other. The way they laughed more. The way the tension had started to ease. One night at dinner, Arden said, "So are you two together now?" Serena nearly choked on her water. Roman smiled. He said, "We're figuring it out." Arden said, "Good. Because it's kind of exhausting pretending I don't see you guys making eyes at each other." Serena blushed. She said, "We do not make eyes." Arden said, "Mom, yes you do." Roman laughed. And in that moment, sitting around the table, they felt like a family. But not everything was easy. There were moments when old wounds resurfaced. One evening, Serena and Roman got into an argument. It started small. A comment about scheduling. But it escalated. Serena said, "You think you can just waltz back into our lives and everything's fine?" Roman said, "I'm trying." Serena said, "Trying isn't enough. You left. You chose yourself over us. And now you expect me to just forget that?" Roman said, "I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking you to see that I'm different." Serena said, "Prove it." Roman said, "I am. Every single day. But you won't let yourself believe it." The room went silent. Serena's eyes filled with tears. She said, "You're right. I'm scared. I'm terrified that one day you'll wake up and realize this small-town life isn't enough. That we're not enough. And you'll leave again." Roman stepped closer. He said, "I won't." She said, "You don't know that." He said, "Yes I do. Because I've already lived the life without you. And it was empty. You are enough. You've always been enough." Serena broke down. Roman held her as she cried. She said, "I wanted to hate you. It would have been easier." He said, "I know." She said, "But I can't. I tried. But I can't." He said, "I'm sorry. For all of it. For every moment I wasn't there. For every tear you cried alone. For every time Arden asked about me and you had to carry that weight by yourself. I'm so sorry." Serena pulled back. She looked at him through her tears. She said, "I forgive you." Roman's breath caught. He said, "What?" She said, "I forgive you, Roman. Not because you deserve it. But because I need to. For me. For Arden. For us." If you're feeling this story deep in your soul right now, hit that like button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Ellington Love Lines for more stories that touch the heart. From that night forward, things changed. Serena stopped holding back. She let Roman in. Really in. They started going on dates. Simple ones. Walks in the park. Coffee shops. Dinner at the diner. They talked for hours. About everything. About their dreams. Their fears. Their regrets. They laughed. They cried. They healed. Arden watched his parents fall in love again. And it filled something in him he didn't know was empty. One day, he said to Roman, "You know what the best part of you coming back is?" Roman said, "What?" Arden said, "Seeing Mom happy. She smiles more now. She laughs. She's lighter. And that makes me happy." Roman's eyes welled up. He said, "She's an incredible woman." Arden said, "I know. Don't mess it up." Roman said, "I won't. I promise." 6 months after Roman came back, he did something he should have done 14 years ago. He got down on one knee. Not in a fancy restaurant. Not in front of a crowd. But in Serena's backyard, with Arden watching from the kitchen window. He said, "I know I don't deserve you. I know I've made more mistakes than I can count. But I love you. I've loved you since the moment I met you. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice by giving me another chance. Will you marry me?" Serena looked at him. Tears streaming down her face. She said, "You really mean it?" He said, "I've never meant anything more in my life." She looked toward the house. Arden gave her a thumbs up and a grin. She laughed through her tears. She looked back at Roman. She said, "Yes. Yes, I'll marry you." Roman stood. He slipped the ring on her finger. And he kissed her. Not like the first time, when they were young and reckless. But like two people who had been broken and put back together. Stronger than before. Arden ran outside. He hugged them both. He said, "Does this mean we're a real family now?" Serena said, "We've always been a real family, sweetheart." Arden said, "I know. But now it's official." Roman pulled them both close. He said, "I'm the luckiest man alive." Arden said, "Yeah. You are." The wedding was small. Just close friends and family. It wasn't about the spectacle. It was about the commitment. When Roman said his vows, his voice shook. He said, "I stand here today not as the man who left, but as the man who came back. And I promise you, Serena, I will spend every day of my life showing you that coming back was the best decision I ever made." Serena's vows were equally powerful. She said, "I'm choosing to believe in second chances. I'm choosing to believe that people can change. And I'm choosing you. Again. But this time, with my eyes wide open." When they kissed, everyone cheered. Arden stood beside them. The family he'd always wanted. Complete at last. At the reception, Roman gave a speech. He said, "Most people think success is measured in dollars. In titles. In achievements. But I've learned that success is measured in moments. In the people you love. In the family you build. And by that measure, I'm the richest man in the world." Life wasn't perfect after the wedding. There were still challenges. Still moments of doubt. Still old patterns that crept in. But they faced them together. Roman continued to run his company, but he did it differently. He set boundaries. He prioritized family time. He turned down opportunities that would take him away from Serena and Arden. And his company didn't suffer. In fact, it thrived. Because a man who knows what matters makes better decisions. Arden continued to excel. He won competitions. Got scholarships. Made his parents proud. But more importantly, he grew up knowing he was loved. By both his parents. One evening, as Arden prepared for college, he sat with Roman on the porch. He said, "I've been thinking about that letter." Roman said, "The one that started all this?" Arden nodded. He said, "I'm glad I wrote it. Even though it was scary. Even though I didn't know if you'd ever read it." Roman said, "I'm glad you wrote it too. It saved my life. Arden said, no. It saved all our lives. Roman realized his son was right. That letter had been a turning point. Not just for him, but for all of them. It had forced them to confront the past. To deal with pain they'd been avoiding. To choose forgiveness over bitterness. And in doing so, it had given them a future they never thought possible. Roman said, "You're wise beyond your years, you know that." Arden said, "I get it from my parents." Both of them. As the years passed, the Hale family became a testament to the power of second chances. Roman never forgot where he came from. He used his wealth to help others. He funded scholarships for kids like him. Kids who needed a chance. He donated to single mothers. To community programs. To causes that mattered. And he did it quietly. Without fanfare. Because it wasn't about recognition. It was about giving back. Serena went back to school. She got her degree in social work. She opened a community center in their town. A place where families could get support. Where single parents could find resources. Where children could feel safe. Roman funded it. But it was Serena's vision. Her heart. Her legacy. And watching her thrive filled Roman with a pride he'd never felt in any business deal. Arden went to college. He studied engineering. But he also studied ethics. He wanted to build things that mattered. That helped people. That made the world better. He often said, "I want to use technology the way my dad uses his resources. To make a difference." And Roman knew his son would do exactly that. One Thanksgiving, the whole family gathered. Extended family. Friends. People whose lives had been touched by the Hale family's story. As they sat around the table, Roman looked at Serena. Then at Arden. Then at everyone gathered there. He said, "I want to say something." The room quieted. He said, "Years ago, I thought I knew what success looked like. I thought it was money. Power. Influence. But I was wrong. Success is this. This room. These people. This love. And I'm grateful. So incredibly grateful. That I got a second chance. That my son wrote a letter that changed everything. That his mother had the courage to forgive. And that all of you are here to witness what a family can be when they choose love over pain." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Serena squeezed his hand. Arden raised his glass. He said, "To second chances." Everyone echoed, "To second chances." And they meant it. Because they'd all witnessed the transformation. They'd seen a broken family become whole. They'd seen love conquer abandonment. They'd seen forgiveness rewrite the future. Drop a comment right now and tell me, what's the most powerful lesson you've learned from this story? And make sure you're subscribed to Mr. Ellington Love Lines because we have more incredible stories coming your way. Late that night, after everyone had gone home, Roman and Serena sat on their porch. The same porch where he'd proposed. Where they'd had countless conversations. Where they'd rebuilt their love brick by brick. Serena said, "Can you believe how far we've come?" Roman said, "Sometimes it feels like a dream." She said, "It's not a dream. It's real. We're real." He pulled her close. He said, "I almost missed this. All of it. If Arden hadn't written that letter. If it hadn't gone viral. If fate hadn't intervened." Serena said, "But it did. And you came back. That's what matters." Roman said, "Sometimes I think about what my life would be like if I hadn't seen that letter. If I'd just kept going. Building my empire. Chasing success. And it terrifies me. Because I would have had everything and nothing at the same time." Serena said, "But you did see it. And you made a choice. The right choice. He said, the only choice. She said, not everyone would have made it. Some people would have run. Would have denied it. Would have stayed in their comfortable life. But you didn't. You faced it. You faced us. And that took courage. Roman shook his head. He said, it wasn't courage. It was desperation. I was desperate to know my son. Desperate to fix what I'd broken. Desperate to feel like my life had meaning. Serena said, maybe. But desperation can be a good thing. It can push us to do what we should have done all along. He said, I just wish I hadn't needed a viral letter to wake me up. Serena said, we all need something to wake us up. For you, it was Arden's words. For me, it was seeing you try. Really try. Not with money. But with your heart. They sat in comfortable silence. Then Roman said, I want to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone. Serena looked at him. She said, what is it? He said, the night before I left you, all those years ago, I almost didn't. I sat in my apartment. Your number on my screen. My finger hovering over the call button. And I almost pressed it. Almost told you I was scared. That I needed you. That I didn't want to do it alone. But I didn't. I told myself I had to be strong. That asking for help was weakness. And I hung up. And I left. Serena's eyes filled with tears. She said, what would you have said? If you'd called? He said, I would have said, I'm terrified. I'm terrified I'll fail. That I'll disappoint you. That I'll end up like my father. Broken and angry and trapped. But I'm more terrified of losing you. And I need you to help me be brave enough to do both. To chase my dreams and keep you by my side. Because I can't do this without you. Serena wiped her eyes. She said, I would have said yes. I would have said we'd figure it out together. That you didn't have to choose. Roman said, I know. That's what makes it so painful. I made a choice that didn't need to be made. Serena took his face in her hands. She said, but you're here now. And that's what I choose to focus on. Not what was lost. But what we found. Roman kissed her forehead. He said, how did I get so lucky? She said, you didn't get lucky. You worked for it. You showed up. You changed. And that's not luck. That's love. Inside the house, Arden sat at his desk. He was working on a new project. A documentary about second chances. About families torn apart by circumstance and brought back together by love. He'd interviewed his parents. Recorded their story. Captured their journey. Not for fame. But because he believed other people needed to hear it. Needed to know that it's never too late. That broken things can be mended. That love, real love, can survive anything. As he edited the footage, he watched his father's interview. Roman's voice filled the room. My biggest regret is not the years I missed. It's the lie I told myself. The lie that success and love were incompatible. That I had to choose. Because the truth is, success without love isn't success at all. It's just noise. And I lived in that noise for so long, I forgot what music sounded like. Until my son reminded me. Arden smiled. He thought about everything that had happened. The letter he'd written on a whim. The way it had spread across the internet. The moment his father showed up at their door. The slow, painful process of rebuilding trust. And now, sitting in this house, with both his parents under the same roof, he felt complete. He had written that letter to make peace with an absence. But instead, it had filled that absence with presence. With love. With family. The documentary premiered at Arden School. The entire community came. They watched in silence as the story unfolded. Roman's rise to wealth. Serena's strength as a single mother. Arden's letter. The reunion. The healing. When it ended, there was a standing ovation. People were crying. Hugging their loved ones. Pulling out their phones to call family members they'd lost touch with. Because the story wasn't just about the Hale family. It was about every family that had been broken. Every person who thought it was too late. Every heart that needed to believe in second chances. After the screening, a woman approached Roman. She said, "Thank you." He said, "For what?" She said, "For showing us that it's never too late. I've been estranged from my daughter for 5 years. After watching this, I'm going to call her." Roman's eyes filled with tears. He said, "That's the best thing I've heard all night." The woman said, "Your son's letter changed your life. Maybe it'll change mine too." That night, lying in bed, Roman told Serena about the woman. Serena said, "You know what this means?" Roman said, "What?" She said, "Arden's letter didn't just save our family. It's saving others." Roman said, "He's remarkable." Serena said, "He gets it from you." Roman said, "No. He gets it from you. You're the one who raised him. Who taught him empathy. Who showed him what real strength looks like. I just showed up." Serena said, "Showing up is half the battle." Roman said, "Then I'm glad I finally learned how to fight it." Years continued to pass. Arden graduated college. He started his own company. Not a tech giant like his father's. But a non-profit. One that connected estranged families. That provided counseling. That helped people heal. Roman funded it. But he never interfered. He let his son build his own legacy. And watching Arden succeed in ways that mattered, in ways that helped people, filled Roman with more pride than any business deal ever had. One day, Arden called Roman. He said, "Dad, I need to tell you something." Roman said, "What is it?" Arden said, "I'm getting married." Roman's heart swelled. He said, "That's incredible. Tell me about her." Arden said, "Her name's Maya. She's a teacher. She's kind. She's strong. She reminds me of Mom." Roman said, "Then she must be extraordinary." Arden said, "She is. And I wanted to ask you something. Will you be my best man?" Roman's voice broke. He said, "It would be the honor of my life." At Arden's wedding, Roman stood beside his son. As Arden said his vows, Roman thought about his own wedding. About the promises he'd made to Serena. Promises he'd kept. And he realized that this moment, watching his son commit to the woman he loved, was the culmination of everything. Every choice. Every mistake. Every moment of healing. It had all led here. To this. To a family that had been broken and rebuilt. To love that had been lost and found. To a future that was bright because the past had been faced. During his toast, Roman said, "My son once wrote a letter that changed all our lives. He wrote about forgiveness. About hope. About the power of showing up. And today, as I watch him marry the love of his life, I'm reminded that the best legacy we can leave isn't money or power or success. It's love. It's teaching the next generation that people are worth fighting for. That families are worth rebuilding. That second chances are worth taking. Arden, you taught me that. And I'm so proud to be your father." Arden hugged him. He whispered, "Thank you for coming back." Roman said, "Thank you for giving me a reason to." They held each other. Father and son. And in that embrace, every year of absence was forgiven. Every tear was worth it. Every struggle had meaning. Because they had found their way back to each other. And that was everything. Serena watched them from her seat. She thought about the scared girl who'd raised a baby alone. The woman who'd built a life from nothing. The heart that had been shattered and slowly pieced back together. And she smiled. Because she'd done it. She'd survived. She'd forgiven. She'd loved again. And now, watching her son start his own family, she knew it had all been worth it. That night, after the wedding, Roman and Serena danced alone in the empty ballroom. The music played softly. Roman said, "We did it." Serena said, "What?" He said, "We raised an incredible son. We built a beautiful life. We proved that broken things can be fixed." She said, "No. You proved that people can change. That's the real miracle." He said, "I changed because of you. Because you gave me a reason to." She said, "And you stayed because you wanted to. That's the difference." He pulled her closer. He said, "I'll never leave again." She said, "I know. And that's why I love you." As they swayed to the music, Roman thought about the journey. About the boy who'd run from love. The man who'd chased success. The father who'd come back. And the husband who'd learned that the greatest achievement wasn't building an empire. It was building a home. A family. A love that could withstand anything. He looked at Serena. She was older now. Gray streaked her hair. Lines marked her face. But to him, she'd never been more beautiful. Because every line told a story. Every gray hair represented a year of strength. And he was grateful for all of it. He said, "Do you ever regret it? Giving me another chance?" She said, "Not even once." He said, "Even on the hard days?" She said, "Especially on the hard days. Because those days remind me that what we have is real. That we fought for it. That it wasn't easy. And that makes it worth more." He said, "I love you." She said, "I love you too. And I'm proud of us. For not giving up. For choosing love over pain. For showing Arden what a real marriage looks like." Roman said, "What does a real marriage look like?" She said, "This. Two imperfect people refusing to quit on each other." Before we wrap up this incredible journey, I want to hear from you. What moment in this story touched you the most? Drop it in the comments below. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe to Mr. Ellington Love Lines because we're here to remind you that love always finds a way. Months later, Arden and Maya announced they were expecting a baby. When they told Roman and Serena, Roman cried. He said, "I'm going to be a grandfather." Serena said, "We're going to be grandparents." Arden said, "And you're going to be amazing. Because you've already shown me what great parenting looks like." Roman said, "I've also shown you what terrible parenting looks like." Arden said, "Yeah. But you fixed it. You came back. And that's what I'll tell my child. That their grandfather made mistakes. But he didn't let those mistakes define him. He let them teach him." When the baby was born, a little girl named Grace, Roman held her for the first time and wept. He looked at her tiny face. Her small fingers. Her perfect features. And he made a promise. He said, "I will never miss a moment of your life. I will show up. I will be present. I will love you without conditions. Because I know what it's like to miss out. And I will never make that mistake again." Serena stood beside him. She said, "She's lucky to have you." Roman said, "I'm the lucky one. I get to be here. I get to witness this. I get to be the grandfather I never had." As Grace grew, she became the light of their lives. She had Arden's curiosity and Maya's kindness. But she also had something else. A way of looking at people that reminded Roman of himself. One day, when Grace was 5, she climbed into Roman's lap. She said, "Grandpa, tell me a story." Roman said, "What kind of story?" She said, "A story about you." Roman thought for a moment. Then he said, "Once upon a time, there was a man who thought he had everything. But he was wrong. Because he didn't have love. He didn't have family. And without those things, he had nothing at all." Grace said, "What happened to him?" Roman said, "He got a second chance. Someone wrote him a letter. A very special letter. And that letter opened his eyes. It helped him see what really mattered." Grace said, "What mattered?" Roman said, "Love. Family. Being there for the people who need you." Grace said, "Did he learn his lesson?" Roman smiled. He said, "Yes. He did. And he spent the rest of his life making sure he never forgot it." Grace hugged him. She said, "I'm glad he learned. Because otherwise, I wouldn't have you." Roman's eyes filled with tears. He said, "That's right. And having you is the greatest gift I could ever ask for." Grace said, "I love you, Grandpa." Roman said, "I love you too, sweetheart. More than you'll ever know." Years passed. Roman eventually retired. He handed over his company to people he trusted. People who shared his values. People who understood that business wasn't just about profit. It was about impact. He spent his days with Serena. They traveled. They volunteered. They spent time with their family. And Roman finally understood what it meant to be successful. It wasn't about what you accumulated. It was about who you loved. Who loved you back. And the legacy you left behind. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Roman and Serena stood in the same backyard where he'd proposed. Their families surrounded them. Arden and Maya. Grace and her younger brother, Nathan. Friends they'd made over the years. People whose lives had been touched by their story. Roman raised his glass. He said, 20 years ago, I made a choice. To come back. To fight for this family. To become the man I should have been from the start. And every day since, I've been grateful for that choice. Because it gave me this. All of you. This love. This life. And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Serena said, when Roman came back, I didn't know if I could trust him. I didn't know if he'd changed. But he showed me. Day after day. Year after year. He showed up. He stayed. He loved us with everything he had. And that's all I ever wanted. Not money. Not status. Just presence. Just love. And he gave us that. So today, I want to say thank you. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for staying. Thank you for showing our son what it means to be a good man. And thank you for showing me what it means to truly forgive. They kissed. And everyone cheered. Grace said, that's gross. Nathan laughed. Arden said, that's love, kiddo. Get used to it. Maya said, I hope we're like them one day. Arden said, we will be. Because they taught us how. As the sun set on the celebration, Roman sat alone for a moment. He thought about everything. The scared kid who'd run from poverty. The ambitious man who'd chased success. The broken father who'd read a letter that changed his life. And the grandfather who now understood that the greatest wealth wasn't measured in dollars. It was measured in moments like this. In grandchildren laughing. In a wife who'd forgiven him. In a son who'd given him a second chance. In a family that had been broken and rebuilt stronger than before. He thought about Arden's letter. The letter that had gone viral. The letter that had reached millions of people. The letter that had brought him home. And he realized that words had power. That vulnerability had strength. That a 14-year-old boy's honest expression of love and forgiveness had saved not just one life, but many. Because that letter had inspired others. Had given hope to broken families. Had shown the world that it's never too late to come back. To try again. To choose love over fear. Roman pulled out his phone. He opened a note. And he began to type. Not a business plan. Not a strategy. But a letter. To Arden. To Serena. To Grace and Nathan. To everyone who'd been part of his journey. He wrote, there are moments in life that define us. Moments that show us who we really are. For me, that moment came when I read 4 words. I forgive you, Dad. Those words broke me. Rebuilt me. Saved me. And I want you to know that every choice I've made since then has been because of that moment. Because of the love and grace you showed me. I was lost. And you found me. I was broken. And you healed me. I was alone. And you gave me a family. Thank you. For everything. For believing in second chances. For showing me what really matters. For loving me even when I didn't deserve it. I will spend the rest of my days being worthy of that love. He saved the letter. He'd give it to them later. When the time was right. But for now, he just sat. Watching his family. Listening to their laughter. Feeling their love. And knowing that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. He had everything he'd ever chased. But more importantly, he had everything that actually mattered. Love. Family. Purpose. Peace. Serena found him. She sat beside him. She said, what are you thinking about? He said, how grateful I am. For all of this. For you. She leaned her head on his shoulder. She said, me too. He said, I almost lost this. She said, but you didn't. You came back. And that's what counts. He said, I'll never stop coming back. Every day. For the rest of my life. I'll choose you. Choose us. Choose this. She said, I know. And that's why we're going to be okay. No matter what comes. We'll face it together. They sat in silence. Watching the stars appear. Listening to the sounds of their family inside. And Roman thought, this is success. This is what I was searching for all along. Not in boardrooms or bank accounts. But here. In this moment. With this woman. With this family. This is everything. And he was right. Because in the end, the greatest achievements aren't measured in wealth or fame or power. They're measured in love. In the people who stand beside you. In the second chances you're brave enough to take. In the courage to admit you were wrong. In the strength to change. In the wisdom to know what really matters. And Roman Hale, the billionaire who had everything and nothing, had finally learned that lesson. And it had made all the difference. As the night grew late, the family gathered for one last photo. 3 generations. Standing together. Smiling. Complete. Grace said, say cheese. Everyone laughed. The camera clicked. And in that frozen moment, captured forever, was the proof that broken things can be mended. That lost time can be redeemed. That families torn apart can be brought back together. That love, real love, can survive anything. Even 14 years of absence. Even mistakes that seemed unforgivable. Even pain that felt permanent. Because love isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. It's about showing up. It's about saying I'm sorry. It's about forgiving. It's about trying. Again and again. Until you get it right. And the Hale family had gotten it right. Not because they never struggled. But because they never stopped trying. They chose love over bitterness. Forgiveness over resentment. Hope over despair. And in doing so, they became a testament to the power of second chances. Roman looked at the photo later that night. Serena beside him. Their family all together. And he smiled. A real smile. The kind that comes from deep inside. From a place of peace and gratitude and joy. He said, "We did it." Serena said, "Yes. We did." He said, "I love you." She said, "I love you too. Always have. Always will." He said, "Even when I didn't deserve it." She said, "Especially then. Because that's what love does. It stays. Even when it hurts. Even when it's hard. It stays." And Roman finally understood. Love wasn't a weakness. It was the greatest strength of all. It wasn't a distraction from success. It was the very definition of it. And he had spent 14 years learning a lesson that had been right in front of him all along. That the only thing worth building wasn't an empire. It was a home. A family. A life filled with people who mattered. And now, holding Serena's hand, watching their family sleep peacefully under the same roof, Roman Hale knew he was the richest man alive. Not because of his bank account. But because of his heart. And that made all the difference.